Hej och välkomna till avsnitt nummer 6 i serien av webbinarier Design för bättre hälsa på temat patienter och brukare som aktiva medskapare. Good morning and welcome to this webinar number 6 in the series Design for better health, patients and users as active co-producers. Den här webbinarieserien ordnar vi till samverkan mellan SKL, Sveriges kommuner och landsting, och SVID, Stiftelsen Svensk Industridesign. This series of webinars is arranged by Alla, Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, and SWED, the Swedish Industrial Design Foundation. My name is Marie Pernebring and I work in Alla, and at my side is Jonas Gombo.
Yes, and I work at the Swedish Industrial Design Foundation.
Vi vet att ni som tittar har massor med kunskaper och erfarenheter, och vi hoppas att ni efter presentationen, som kommer att ta ungefär en halvtimme, vill delta i vårt diskussionsforum som finns i konferensrummet på webben. Ett annat alternativ är att ni använder Twitter, designfph. Och om ni skulle vilja ställa frågor till Aviv Katz, som är vår föreläsare idag, på svenska, så går det bra, vi kommer att översätta. We hope that followers outside of Sweden will be interested in taking part in our discussion afterwards. Aviv Katz, who is our speaker today, will go on for about half an hour, and then we will welcome you to our chat forum. Or if you want to use Twitter, you can see the design FBH on the screen. The theme for today is Redesign Social Care, co-producing the support. And with examples from Great Britain, Aviv Katz will tell us how they work by using design methods and making networks with their users and inhabitants. And Aviv works for Innovation Unit, which is a non-profit organization helping public sector to find different solutions which are better and cheaper. Now we will, after Aviv's presentation, which will take half an hour, we have asked Eva Westerling, who is one of our colleagues at Alla, to put the first questions to Aviv. And now I leave the floor to Aviv, and welcome to us in Sweden. We're all excited and eager to listen to you and how you support radical changes in local authorities and other public actors in UK. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, good. Hello. Very excited to be speaking to you all from rainy London. So my name is Aviv and I work for Innovation Unit. I thought I would start off by saying a few words about our organization and about the design element of the Innovation Unit, because it hasn't always had a design presence. So Innovation Unit started off in the Department for Education as part of the civil service in the UK, and it spun out initially working with education organizations, schools, school federations, on innovating and finding new ways of developing teaching and learning and school leadership and organizational change. And it has broadened its expertise across health and social care, criminal justice and local authority work over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years. The point at which I joined the organization was about 4 years ago, and at the time we focused very much on an analytical way of working, which was based on research, mainly analytical research, theoretical research, working slightly like a think tank and slightly like part of the civil service, in fact. So when we helped innovation, it was by looking across the world, doing research, finding out where other people were doing innovation, and capturing that and disseminating that innovation to to various organizations that we worked with. From that point onwards, that has changed, and we've grown a capacity for service design in the organization, which has an aim to work alongside organizations to build their capability and capacity to use design methods and to demonstrate a different way of working, which is in many cases very countercultural. It's very, it feels very risky and feels a little bit too playful for many of the local authorities or people in the National Health Service that we work with. At the moment, the Innovation Unit has three main functions. One is design, the other is learning, and the third is change. And what we try and do is integrate those three strands across all of our work. As you'll see in the example that I will give in a moment, you cannot do a project that just does one of those things, or you can, but it's not as effective. So this project definitely tries to integrate working with designers, but also learning along the way, working with researchers and analysts, and trying to enable transformational change in the organizations, because it's not enough that they learn a new skill or that they learn a new piece of insight or knowledge about how to do things. They usually have to change the way that they work, the way that their governance is organized, the way that relationships between organizations are established through contracts, etc. Okay, so that's about the Innovation Unit. My own personal background is I trained initially as a product designer and spent the first few years of my career designing products, furniture, exhibitions in museums, and some interactive sort of websites and displays. And I moved from there to into the field of service design because I found that I was more interested in the research and design of interfaces that people have, journeys that people have. I subsequently did a master's degree in anthropology because I wanted to focus really on the research practice and understanding how to observe and learn about people's lives and how to interact. And so my personal career has been one of integrating design and research and now also change and working with organizations on big challenges, such as the one I will now present. So, Prevention Matters is the name of a new program that has been set up in Buckinghamshire County Council. Buckinghamshire is a local authority just north of London. There are less than 1 million people living in Buckinghamshire, I think about 700,000. And it's a semi-rural county. So there are 4 or 5 towns and quite a lot of countryside. And the demographics in Buckinghamshire are quite different from London. It's much more much more white, less multicultural, and the pockets of foreigners, multicultural, black, minority, and Asian communities are in those 3 or 4 towns. And often the problems or challenges that they present are very, very different from the vast majority of the authority. The local authority is led by a Conservative party. It's a very safe seat for the Conservative MP, and therefore the politics internally are such that allow for a certain level of risk-taking by the politicians, because I think they feel relatively safe in their political seats. And I think that's an important thing to bear in mind. The focus of the project has been on helping individuals to stay independent and active, as the slide says. And when we say individuals, we mean adults and particularly elderly people. So when we say adults, anybody over 18, and about 60 or 70% is elderly people. I'm seeing here that I am asked to give an overview of other projects working with the Innovation Unit. I'll happily do that perhaps after I finish this. So I'll move on, I think, giving a specific example initially. So I'll move on to my next slide. This is a context, I think, that's shared across the developed world, a growing challenge of increased demand on health and social care support, contrasted with decreased spend. So an aging population, people are living longer, and healthcare is therefore drawing up a bigger share of the amount of money that's being spent. Local authorities, in this case, are in charge of social care, and so what we see on this slide is a graph of the number of adults who are presenting with some sort of need. So at the bottom we have critical to substantial need, then we have low to moderate need at the top, and in between that we've got a certain segment that we've put in an orange color, which is where we think prevention can have an impact. So this is where, in theory, if you invest upfront with people who are still active and independent and living in their own homes, if you invest in them, there is a relatively good chance that you will be able to prevent the rapid deterioration or the slow deterioration and be able to avert certain treatments, and therefore that investment will pay off. And what we will see is not a steady increase in the people who are substantial to critical, but we'll see that stabilizing, and the people who are being prevented are essentially helping to balance the books. So as you see there is a projected 3% budget increase over the next 4 years, coupled with a 16% demand increase as projected by the local statisticians. The aim of the program is therefore to demonstrate the value of investing in prevention for quality of life, for quality of treatment, and to reduce the cost of delivery. There is definitely an economic imperative behind this, but it's not only that. There is a desire for people in their later life to have fuller, more meaningful lives, not to feel like they are being neglected or waited, people waiting for them to essentially deteriorate and die. And many of the people that we've spoken to feel like, okay, life is behind them and they are now in the waiting room, essentially. The way that we thought this could be achieved is by empowering people, developing stronger communities, focusing on early intervention of specific people who are at risk, and having responsive services who are there at the right place at the right time, and importantly, developing a whole system approach. And what does that mean? Prevention works when people feel more resilient in their own homes, with their friends, with their families, with the networks of people around them. They don't feel that because a service has done something to them, because they've seen somebody or because some technology has made them so necessarily. So in order to create that sense of confidence and resilience, you need lots of organizations and lots of people who are not working in organizations to work better together or to change the way that they currently do their business. We had to focus on a specific cohort, a specific group of people, in order to measure the cost-benefit analysis. And we've selected the people who are having medium to high needs. And across the county there are roughly 9,000 people with that level of need, of which only about 1,500 are currently being supported by the council. The vast majority of those people, so I'm looking in the center of the slide, people who are above the shaded green area. These are people who are unsupported. This is either because they're not eligible, maybe because they have sufficient funds to care for themselves, or they're not asking for any help. But these are the people whom we want to focus on to make sure that they can remain in this category and don't dip below the line, as it were. So we're talking about 7,000 people, give or take a few, and this is very helpful for us to know whether these 7,000 are increasing or decreasing over time, whether they are changing the number of people in that group, etc. The opportunity presented itself for this project through a transfer of about £4 million from the National Health Service to the local authority. This was something that was promoted by the central government for the health service to work closer with the local authority and specifically to spend on prevention in adult care. I think without that money, which was perceived as kind of free money by the local authority, it would have been very difficult to create this project. And we find that big and innovative projects happen often when there is suddenly a new pot of money or some kind of change in the way that funds are allocated. Suddenly there is something that people can do differently and are not expected to fulfill their existing, very, very important issues, obviously, but there's a lot of pressure to maintain the status quo often. So what did we do? I guess up until now I've given you a background to the project, but I haven't told you what the Innovation Unit's involvement has been. And we joined in early 2012, so more than a year ago, and we're asked to apply a co-productive approach to this challenge. And I remember distinctly sitting with the Commissioner for Adult Care and her telling me that this is a very easy challenge for her in some respects. And usually she would have a team of experts, managers, bid writers, who would sit in a room and write the specification for a service like this. They know the challenge, they know the budget that they have, they know who the cohort is, and it's quite, it would be quite simple and relatively inexpensive for them to just write a specification and then either go out to tender to find a third party or private organization to deliver it, or to conduct it internally. However, she said that she believed that this approach has to be done in a multi-agency partnership fashion, and therefore the design of it has to be done by a partnership. And this is something that the Innovation Unit, we believe in very, very strongly. A lot of these problems are best tackled through a partnership approach, and even though it's difficult and painful sometimes, when it works, it certainly pays off. So to start off with, actually, why don't I pause right now and I will ask Dan to put on a 3-minute video.
What we're trying to achieve is we're trying to create a prevention model structure that covers the whole of Buckingham County Council with people who would largely fall outside of social care responsibility. So bringing people together to take through the various processes of identifying the needs, identifying the clients, thinking about how the system might work.
So we need to be in a position where people have a greater ability to make their own decisions, because that's what they're telling us they want to as well. They don't want to have things done to them anymore. They want to be more knowledgeable, have more influence over their own lives.
We started off by running a launch workshop with around 70 people from voluntary and community organisations, from the county, the district councils, service users, carers, representative organisations. We tried to really get at the challenge and present different inspiring examples from around the world that we collected doing our research. And that was sort of the starting point for thinking about how ambitious we want to be about this project.
One of the first things that struck me was the inclusivity. There was an openness to ideas. I certainly didn't feel pushed down a certain road, down a certain agenda.
Yeah, I think the externalisation of the facilitation is really important. It gives you straight away that sort of neutral profile. How you have prioritised information and brought information together and contrasted it, I think has been really helpful. I thought it was really interesting looking at the various personas we did and the day in the life work that was done, actually spending some time with individuals to work out actually from their perspective what little bit of support, what bit of help would make a difference to them.
And we use that as a way of analysing and surfacing some new issues that don't come up when you just look at the numbers and the kind of the metrics. We try to build up a map of what does the system actually look like. This map was then interrogated by another workshop where we invited participants from various organisations to look at this and say, well, actually, the third sector is a lot more significant. If you look at the faith sector, the value that it provides, the activities it provides are so much more significant than we alluded to here. So that became quite an important underpinning to some of the recommendations we put forward later on.
I think visual is good. I mean, it suits me. I'm a very visual person in the way I work anyway. But it's sort of taken, I think, everybody out of the normal way of working. This was unusual. It's not the normal corporate way of going about things, and I think it's refreshing. I think it allowed us to think in a more creative way.
We realised these two roles were quite important in the future model, so we set up a workshop dedicated just to the development, to work in groups to develop the sort of almost the job spec of these roles.
It's been quite a complicated process, I think, to get everyone's minds and everyone's opinion about how this should work, sort of thing. But yes, I think the tools that's been used today has been very good in facilitating that discussion and agreement. It's taken several hours, but we've finally got there, and I think we've got a much clearer picture now of what these two roles will be.
We know from our experience that you need to test these things out with the users, with the people who might be delivering them. So we set up two sessions like this. We invited potential service users and people who might be delivering this role and asked them to role play. The important thing about prototyping is not to be too precious about it, but actually to try and see where it fails.
When we share lots of information, and we've got lots of visual posters stuck around the room, so it's not just one person lecturing and teaching us from their perspective, it's all inclusive of everything else, so we feel that we can move forward quite effectively.
I think some of the project design and the finish of some of the reports and pieces of presentation work from innovation have been excellent.
It's very, very interesting, this course, looking in other people and giving me lots of ideas.
I think that the nature of the facilitation allowed everybody to be heard and also to voice opinions, no matter how disparate.
What we tried to do is create excitement and energy in a 4-month project, which is what I think we managed to do. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully you can hear me. I want to just pull out a few of the things that you just saw in the video, which I think are significant for a co-design, co-production approach. I think what comes across from that is certainly a sense that it's a very visual process, and I think we believe very passionately in creating materials for every workshop, for every engagement, for every bit of research that we do that are that go beyond just words on a page, that use imagery, that use animations, that use film. Every workshop that we run, we spend quite a lot of hours in designing the different exercises, the materials, whether it's posters or booklets or questionnaires or templates. And I think that's something that I've certainly picked up in my work as a designer. And when I joined the Innovation Unit, and certainly working with a lot of client organizations, that's a very big difference. The people whom we work with do not spend as much time as we do thinking about how to design a workshop. Getting a designer in for 2 or 3 days to design a set of cards or a poster which can get people into quite complicated data or information. And that's one area where I think service design, being a design discipline, takes the visualization of information very seriously. And obviously the fact that our team is made up of designers who went to design school and can produce things that are pretty but also very fit for purpose helps. The other thing is the ethnographic research. It was mentioned slightly, but I think that's something that we do in almost every project that we run. We say to the organizations that we work with that we would like to spend a few weeks or months conducting ethnographic research. That type of research, for those of you who haven't heard of it before, is related to anthropology, where you go out and spend time observing different cultures, different people in the way that they live. In this case, we spent a full day with about 10 older people in their homes, which is not by any means an ethnographic, a rigorous ethnographic study, but it's a lot more than the local authority would ever do in terms of conducting market research. The normal ways are to conduct surveys, to have town hall meetings and talk to people for an hour or two, or at most to have an interview, a 2-hour interview. So spending a full day with somebody in their house or outside, going shopping, or going to a Pilates class that they might be participating in, some pub lunches that people were going. So taking me around the community to really understand what life is like for these people, what's important to them, and what prevention means was very, very important. And that's an important factor, I think, in every project. Once you've done that, it's very, very difficult to dispute the integrity of your work as a designer, because what you have is the voice of the people on your side. So you might have commissioners telling you, this is completely wrong for all sorts of reasons, and the politicians might say this goes against policy. But what you can do is argue back. You have spent time with people. This is what you've seen. This is what people have told you, and that's a very, very strong argument. It's also very, very generative in terms of ideas and insights and creativity, and being able to come back from a period of field work and create a wall full of post-it notes with all the things that you've heard and all the ideas that those have sprung off means that as a designer you feel very rich with ideas and opportunities. The next thing I wanted to touch on was the system analysis. The system analysis was conducted by part of our research team. So as I mentioned earlier, we're not all designers. We have some researchers who are very good at conducting both quantitative but also qualitative interviews, and we've interviewed a number of commissioners, people who work in procurement or management of various services or programs, as well as people in the voluntary and community sector who might be delivering these services. And what we did with that information is we've created both a visual map of what the system currently looks like in terms of the flows of money, reporting, commissioning, oversight, but also a set of recommendations for the whole partnership to say, if we are going to take this program forward, we need to make certain changes to the way we currently work. And I'll give an example of that. We noticed that there are very deep silos or barriers between the local authority, social care, and the health system. Equally, between the county and the district. This is the level below the county. The districts are responsible for community level activities, libraries, sports and leisure, and a lot of what we looked at in terms of prevention actually falls into that category. And so the question is, does the county, which wants to save the money in social care, deliver money to the districts who are responsible for promoting well-being and leisure? sorry. So some of the recommendations were about joint working, about co-location, so getting people from different organizations to be based in the same place, or for secondments, for some person to be spending, to be paid by one organization but working with another, and also for the governance, so the board that oversees this, the board that oversees this program must contain a cross-section of the partnership. Right, I'll move on and talk to you about what the model actually works like. So after about 4 months, 3 months, 4 months of research and a lot of co-design workshops, some of which were small with maybe 6 to 8 people, some were big with about 70 people, and some of them were what we call prototyping. So we tried things out through role-playing. We may have mocked up some new types of forms or templates that we wanted the new service to use, and got people to use them in action and get people to tell us whether that feels strange or whether it feels better. So the new model has 4 components, which are new. So the first one is a community links officer, that's on the left. The community links officer is responsible for making local connections between the people who are currently not talking to each other very much. So that could be health, social care, general practice, primary, acute, district nurses, social workers, as well as the myriad of people in the community. So priests, people who are working in post offices or in pubs, people who run exercise classes. These really are the eyes and ears of the system, and it's very important to get in touch with them, because they know when somebody, if somebody is suddenly becoming vulnerable because their partner has died and they're all alone and they're falling into depression, or somebody's had a fall and we don't see them anymore. Those kinds of people don't always turn up at their doctors. Sometimes they just disappear, and it's very important to connect with the informal networks to identify those people. The next component is the blue community practice worker. These are new frontline staff, frontline roles that meet with people who are in our target cohorts. So those 7,000 people, once we've found them, some of them will be referred to a community practice worker, and they might have one meeting, or they might have several meetings or sessions over a number of months. And the role of the CPW, the community practice worker, is to support those people to develop social networks, to start volunteering, or to work, or to be active in some way, to connect with their family, to get services that maybe they don't know about but they're eligible for. So it's a sort of hand-holding as well as signposting role. And there are now, I believe, about 15 community practice workers that have been recruited and trained, and some of them are working inside health surgeries, clinics. Some of them are working in other community organizations or charities. Next along is the Intelligence Hub. The Intelligence Hub is really the most important thing that will make this program sustainable, because as I mentioned earlier, there is £4 million. That's supposed to last for 3 years of running this, and most of the cost is spent on number 1 and number 2, the CLOs and the CPWs. But what happens when the money runs out? Will commissioners know where to spend money on prevention? Will they know whether some of the activities that they're currently funding are working better than others? And that's where the Intelligence Hub is a new function with some people who work there and are tracking and monitoring and collecting data from health, from social care, from the CLOs and the CPWs, understanding who's being seen, what kind of problems are being presented, as well as community level issues. So how many volunteers are joining the system? How many clubs are being set up? How many of different types of voluntary opportunities are there? So all of this intelligence up to this point has been very fragmented. Some has been held by districts, some has been held by the social care team, and some by health. The role of the Intelligence Hub is to bring that all together with a very specific focus around prevention in order to create a value proposition that can say, if you invest £1 million in X, Y, and Z, you will be able to save more than £1 million by deferring treatments and getting people to be healthier for longer. And finally, at the end, the Volunteer Hub is a function that helps current voluntary sector by helping to recruit volunteers, to campaign, and to screen and train volunteers. This diagram shows how the system works. So at the top, we've got the community. On the left, we have institutions. They might be churches or surgeries or clinics or certain groups, like groups of blind people or groups of people with of carers. The CLO interfaces with those different groups and often with the people who lead those groups. And then the CPW interfaces with the individuals who are referred or identified. All of the intelligence is pooled to the Intelligence Hub, which is right down at the bottom. We'll skip through this. I've talked about the investments. This slide just indicates that the way that the roles have been deployed is based on the needs analysis. So looking at this map, we identified where these 7,000 people live and therefore have made sure that we locate the new roles and the new services nearest to where they are. In terms of the cost benefit, we've looked very hard for evidence around prevention, and there is very, very little evidence that we could hang this on. I think we are pioneers, certainly in the UK, of trying to create the evidence base for prevention and for this way of working. And there is currently an evaluation by an external evaluator that's undertaken to look at putting actual figures against the activities and money spent. Okay, my time is running out, so I will finish there and I think open it up to the floor. Before yes, I think I'll open it up to the floor. If people want me to talk about other projects, then I'm happy to do that. If you want me to answer questions about this one, we can do that as well.
I think, Aviv, that we will start with some questions and then we will try to get some time in the end for you to give us just some short information about other projects that you work with. So I'll leave the floor to my colleague Eve and she'll start the conversation with you. Hello there, Aviv. Thank you for a very nice presentation. I'm very interested in some, especially in the end when you had to run through a lot of slides. So maybe you have time now to answer a few questions. But I will start with the co-design approach that you talked about in the beginning. And I heard you said it's painful sometimes. Why? Why do you think this approach could be painful sometimes?
It's painful because it's countercultural to these organizations. So I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm sitting in a very fancy hall. I don't know if you can see behind me. This is a town hall in a local authority in London. And I'm here because I'm going to be running a workshop this afternoon. And the expectations of both the people who have asked us to run the workshop and the people coming are that we will be presenting policies that have been set by policymakers, by politicians, by decision makers, and we will have a discussion with the community, questions and answers. And when we say to them, we're not going to do that, or we might do that in small tables, but what we actually want to do is design something with you, people find that very odd. They find it odd that they are invited into this creative space, that suddenly they are sitting around the table with people who aren't experts, because who is an expert in my life? Nobody. I am the expert in my life. And everybody suddenly has a shared language around issues which are quite prosaic. And I think this cultural shift of moving from a command and control system, which the public sector often is, with knowledge seemingly at the top, trickling down to the people who have less power, certainly, switching that around and saying that the power is at the front line, that is where the decisions have to be made, and this is where the creativity should reside, and that the role of the people at the top of the organization is to facilitate that and to enable it and to make it useful. That's quite difficult.
Thank you. If we go further on to your model with CLO and the different things, how do you find the CLOs? How do you recruit them and find them?
Well, I have to say that I didn't find them. What we did is we ran some workshops to identify what are the skills and the capabilities and also the kind of attitudes that we're looking for. And also we had to spend some time thinking about what kind of a pay grade, what is the salary of this person, where do they sit in relationship to other people doing a similar job. And once those decisions have been made, the local authority went out using their normal recruitment routes and found those people.
Thank you. In the end, you rushed through, but I think I understood that it's quite difficult to find data and results and so on. But the intelligence hub, I understood, have this role of both having some control of the money, but also trying to find out what does happen out in the CLOs and the community practice workers, and not only try to find data, how many, and the activities, but also some kind of results. Can you please talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. Okay. So the CPWs, the community practice workers, are seeing individuals that are referred to them. So initially they will conduct a short interview and collect information about users, and this information will be logged onto the system that's held by the intelligence hub. So that system will gradually grow. There are now 300 people on the system because it was launched I think 3 months ago, and they've got roughly 100 people joining every month. So there's now a growing system with people who have been seen and who we know what their current situation is, and the CPWs will go back to those people in 1 year's time and be able to monitor their situation, whether they have increased their social networks, whether they are healthier, whether they've had a fall, maybe they've gone into hospital, and that information will be cross-referenced, maybe, with information from the National Health Service. I say maybe because there are lots of complications in terms of data sharing between the health and the social system. So that's relatively straightforward. The people who are referred into the system, they're logged, and there's a sort of case management program that monitors that. At the CLO level, there are system or kind of community level fields that the CLO has to complete. So looking at how many car schemes there are for people to get transport out of hours, for example. How many volunteers are working with people with learning disabilities? How many, etc. I mean, I don't want to go through a whole list, but there's a number of factors that are very important and currently have not been monitored cohesively. In terms of the work that the that the Intelligence Hub is doing, it has to collect all this information and then make some kind of a business case around prevention. The current assumption is that there's about, I think it's £1,000 that is the cost per user in the program. So that's what it costs for somebody to be in the program. And if we manage to save £1,000, then it's worthwhile. And the savings, we think, are roughly equal in terms of people getting less support with depression, whether it's antidepressants or going to mental health, formal mental health, by having more informal support that they can tap into. There is more support, well, more prevention around falls and just ability to do things in the house, because there's greater access to modifications and things that can be done to aid people to live independently. And then there is prevention of people going into care homes because they have deteriorated too much. And we think that there's £6,000 that are saved with those £1,000 invested per user. That's what the economists have sort of said would be reasonable, but it's based on very, very wild assumptions, I have to say. There's no control group that we can compare this with yet.
Thank you very much. I do have some more questions, but I will let some, there are questions on the web, so we will let them in.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions from the web. And the first comes from Experience Lab in the county of Värmland. Did you support implementation, and how? Do you in any way support service providers or users in running and redesigning the services? How?
Well, we didn't support implementation, and I'm sorry that we didn't, because I was in Buckinghamshire yesterday to run a learning session with them. Our role in implementation so far has been to sort of keep in touch and offer a little bit of advice from time to time. They didn't feel a need to give us a bigger role in implementation. And I'm disappointed that I didn't insist that actually either we or somebody else supports implementation in terms of sustaining the co-productive ethos behind this program. Because what happened after the co-productive phase ended, which I spoke about, is that the county council went into procurement and commissioning and decision-making, and suddenly all the partners which were lined up to collaborate suddenly became almost the clients, or they didn't feel they had the control over this program. They didn't have the power. And so yesterday, having gone in about a year afterwards, what I saw was that the whole ethos of collaboration had really fallen apart. Now they might be able to build that up now, and we're going to speak to them about how they can do that. But I would say that if we were to have a role, if we could turn back the clock, then I would say that our role should be in facilitating the reflection, the learning, and the training from the bottom up. So letting the commissioning and the contracts aside, making sure that the people who are working from the front line, different charities and organizations, making sure that they still feel like they're in control of the design of this program, that it's not been taken away from them.
Thank you very much. Karin Westling in the region of Jönköping is saying this. This was the most interesting webinar of all. Thank you, Mr. Katz. I did not quite understand how you cooperated with the researchers. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think I can. So the researchers are often designers, and sometimes they are people who are not designers. So in the innovation unit, we have a multidisciplinary team that works on different projects. This project had a team of about 5 people, of which I think 2 or 3 were designers, and 2 weren't. They were sort of researchers and coordinators. When we did the ethnographic research, that was shared equally between the whole team. So usually there's a lead who can kind of create the discussion guide and trains the researchers to kind of what are the things that we're looking for, what kind of discussions do we want to have, and then debriefs everybody and leads the analysis. The other bit of research was conducting the interviews and the system analysis and collecting data. That was done by our non-design researchers because I think they have more experience in doing that. And the way that we work together is simply by working as a team, meeting regularly several times a week, sitting next to each other and trying to explore how the whole project is progressing together.
Perfect, thank you. Do you have any questions, Marie, or should I? No, of course.
I've got a couple. You were talking about visiting people and staying with them for one whole day in your ethnographic approach. Did people from the local authority take part in that? And in that case, do you think that they will be able to manage ethnographic ways of working on their own in the future? That's one of the questions. The second one is, why is it that when you leave the local authority, they tend to fall back into, I think, the old way of reacting, being more negotiative, being more contract-filled with all the resources that you had shown them out in the community?
Okay,
so that's my two questions.
Yeah. So with regards to the ethnographic research, the answer is yes. One of the, actually the person who's leading the program went out with me on one of those visits, and I think she found it very, very fascinating. Just in terms of being able to do that, being allowed to take a day off from your job and spend a day talking to some person about things which don't feel that important.
Aviv Priest. Let's see if we can get him online again. Let's see. He will probably
freeze. He's gone.
I think he will try to restart his camera. So if you just hold on a couple of seconds, we will see if we can get him online again. Nästa webbinarium får vi tips om att vi förstås kan passa på och berätta om när vi försöker koppla upp Aviv igen. Och nästa webbinarium går av stapeln den 20 november, samma tid, för nu i Sverige, 12-13, så kommer vi få höra Jerzy Kaczynski från Centrum för personcentrerad vård i Göteborg berätta om deras verksamhet där de bygger upp. De har 2 referensavdelningar där de försöker verkligen på allvar introducera personcentrerad vård, och han är ansvarig för en av de verksamheterna. Så att då är ni förstås väldigt välkomna. Jag skulle gärna se att ni också anmäler er, så kommer ni få påminnelser och instruktioner när det börjar närma sig den här webbinariet.
Vad vi skulle kunna lägga till om det webbinariet är ju att eftersom det handlar om sjukvård och där man är van att mäta och väga allting, så till skillnad mot det som Aviv har berättat där man ännu inte har hittat metoder för att mäta effekter, så har man ju när det gäller den personcentrerade vården och Göteborg kommit en liten bit på vägen när det gäller att faktiskt kunna mäta och visa effekterna av det nya sättet att närma sig personen istället för diagnosen.
Ja, vad säger du, Marie? Ska vi släppa Aviv där och avsluta vårt webbinarium för den här gången?
Vi ska se om Dan har någon liten kommentar till vad som har hänt. Han skriver någonting till oss, vi ska bara se vad han...
Nej, vi avslutar.
Okej.
Så då
så gör vi det helt enkelt. Vi hade velat fråga Aviv innan han försvann, bland annat om det här med designmetoder och etnografiskt tillvägagångssätt är någonting som man använder mer och mer i engelska kommuner. Men vi får se, vi kanske kan få reda på det på något annat sätt. Och med det så stort tack till Aviv, även om man kanske inte hör oss just nu. Och tack även till er som har varit med oss och ställt frågor. Och som sagt var välkomna igen den 20 november.
Tack så mycket.
Hej då.